The offer we have now on the CH3 is that you get 50% off on the chip extraction package. So that includes the 2.2 kilowatt chip extractor here we have with twin bags, 240 liters each. And this one runs on 3-phase, 400 volts, 50 hertz. And also hoses to connect to the CH3. So you have one hose for each outlet, and you have 3 outlets, one for each cutter head. So the CH3 is our 3-sided planer molder. So if we come in closer here, we have 2 side spindles, one adjustable that sets the final width, and then we have a top horizontal block for planing and molding. Because in these empty slots, you can mount molding knives, so you can produce a lot of different profiles. And today I thought we should make a skirting board. So we're going to start preparing for that. But before we do that, if we zoom in on the panel here, you can see that there's a tortoise and there's a rabbit. And that's the 2 feed speeds that you can set this machine to. So the tortoise means 3 meters a minute, and the rabbit is 6 meters a minute. And it's depending on what you're doing. If you're just taking one phase off and just planing the surface and taking off a few millimeters, you can run at the fast speed. And if you do deeper moldings, it's better to run at the slower rate so you get more cuts. And here is where you set the height adjustment on the machine. So on the front here you have a magnetic scale here, and that's where you set the rough thickness, and on the top here you make the fine tuning. So one full turn here is 4 millimeters, and then a quarter, you can see it's a millimeter, and then it goes down to half a millimeter and less than that. So you can really fine tune if needed. And it's the same here for the crank for the adjustable side spindle here. So you use it the same way. In this machine you have 3 normal feed rollers, and then after the material has been planed, the rubber roller is the outfeed roller that doesn't leave any marks. And we use the TB90 blocks on the side spindles, so that means you can just change the different types of molding knives in these. And if you want to mount, for example, molding knives here in the top block, you slide them down, and then you just decide where they should sit here, and then you use a 10 millimeter spanner to secure them. So I thought we'd start out with the pre-planing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start with running the back side of the board. So what we begin with is measuring the width of the board. So it's about 128 millimeters. Yeah, about 128 millimeters. And the thickness on this one is about 25 millimeters. And I thought we're going to make the final thickness 20 millimeters, so we can take it down to about 22 or 23 millimeters in the first pass. So we're going to adjust the thickness here to about 23 there. So we have set the height now, and now we also have to adjust the front fence so it's in line with the second fence in the machine. And the easiest way to do this is just having something straight that you put against the fence here. And you loosen the crank, and then you make sure that it's in line there. Perfect. And the side spindles here are already mounted now. We have just a straight 50 millimeter molding knife in the fixed spindle, and in the adjustable spindle we have a knife making a little bit of chamfer where the skirting board meets the floor. And one thing with these that's actually very good to mention is if you mount a 40 millimeter molding knife, for example, if you're making a T&G, if you want to make a panel or something, if you lower the cutter block without any shims, because you have shims underneath here now, if you lower the block to the bottom, the center of the knives will be in line with the table. So that means that the T&G is also made in the center of the knife. And for example, if you want to make a 22 millimeter finished thickness on a T&G, you just have to put half of that underneath the cutter block. So you put 11 millimeters underneath, and then you get the T&G in the center of the board. But in this case, it's not going to be necessary because we're just doing a skirting board. So we do a straight face on one side and a chamfer on the other side. I'm just gonna get a little spanner. Loosen this. So you can secure this, the adjustable spindle on the shafts, so especially if you're doing deep moldings, so you reduce small vibrations, you can lock it on the shaft. But to be able to adjust it inwards and outwards, you have to undo it again. So now I know that the board we have here is about 128. So that means I'm just gonna put about 10 millimeters extra on the width here, so I'll put it about 138, just to make sure that the board will pass here with no problem, because I'm not going to use the side spindles in this pass. And then I'm going to mount these molding knives just to make a slight track inside the on the back side of the board. This is usually more common when you do sidings, but I just wanted to show you a little bit. So we'll put this at about put it about 25 in there. There, so I put that about 25 mil inside of the fence here where the material will move. And then on the other knife that I'm mounting, I'm actually overlapping a little bit. So this knife, when I put that in here, I'm going to, I don't know if you can see here, I will overlap it about 10 millimeters, so just so I get a little bit of a wider track, and then secure it. Because it's very little protrusion on these knives, you don't get a lot of unbalance. There, so that's secured, there. And then now I'm actually ready for the first pass. So we'll close the lid, and you can see here you have a breaker here. So this is a safety breaker. It's so you have to change secure the hood here, otherwise you can't start the machine. So that's a safety feature, and it's also in the front here. You have, if the material is too uneven, it will push out the plate, and the safety breaker will stop the machine. So it's a multifunction breaker there. So we secure the lid, And then we start the chip extractor. Now we start the feed rollers. And then we start the top block. Perfect. So now we've made the first pass. There. And now we have to remove, because we don't want to use these in the second pass. So we just undo these and remove them. There. And now we're going to use the molding knife for the skirting board. So then on these we have to use 2 clamping gibs on these long ones. There. And what I want now is I want the rounding here to finish in line with the fence. And there's different. You can have a 90-degree, what do you call it? Angle meter, or yeah, angle meter to measure that, or just a little template that we made, so you can tilt that and make sure it's
Carpenter square?
carpenter square, exactly.
It looks so easy, Pelle.
It's actually, once you've get the chance to do this a little bit, it's very easy. And we've actually put quite a lot of emphasis on that when we made this machine. There, and then we do the same on the other side here. There. There, so they're secure now. This one is secured. Remove this. And now we also want to set the final width here. So what you do then is you put the knife here in the middle where it has its deepest protrusion, and I usually break off these little measurer and use them. So we're going to finish this off at we can finish this at 120 mil there. So it's 120 mil to the fence here. And then on the fixed side, we want to make sure that we also get a smooth surface on the side of the boards. We have to move this fence a little bit inwards here. You can see when I put this knife here in the middle, I want a few millimeters so I get a new clean surface here, and then I secure it. Can actually take, because we're taking off a little bit more on this paws, so we can take a little bit extra there. There. And the final thing we have to adjust now is the height of the material. So now we're raising it to 20 millimeters. And we're ready to go. And then you can put it here on 0, because you can turn this. So once you have, if you have to go back and forth a little bit with the pre-planing, it's good to, I usually just turn it like this and 0 it, because then I know once I get to the same position again, it's exactly the same thickness. And now we're ready to go. Now we're ready to do the second pass.
No, that didn't take much time at all.
And maybe five minutes or so.
So, and then the pre-planing first, where you set the correct thickness, and then you just reset it for the final pass.
Yes.
And of course, I mean, if we had a lot of boards to run through, we would run through everything.
Yeah, exactly.
First.
Yeah.
And then now we're doing the final
pass.
The final pass. Hmm?
And you can see I have a little bit more material on this side where we did the track. So I'm going to run the same side against the fence in this pass. So it'll be almost the same on both sides then. So I'll start up the chip extractor. Now we run at a slow speed.
That is super impressive. Pelle, what do you say about the increase in value? I mean, going from fresh cut timber, and then making lumber out of that. But I mean, going from rough sawn boards to this.
Yeah. I mean, if you make, for example, obviously skirting boards demands that you have a very good quality on the so you might have to sort out the material that's being used for making skirting boards. But I mean, something like this might in Sweden, if you go and buy it, might cost around 100 Swedish per meter if you buy this. So I mean, the value that you get on the final product is.
Isn't it somewhere between 5 and 10 times?
Yeah, 5 and 10 times, yeah.
Something
depending
like that.
a little bit what you're
depending
producing.
on what you're doing, of course. I mean,
so this is actually
it's a money-making machine.
This is, if you can sell a bit of what you're producing, this is where you get a lot of value, the majority of the value actually, yeah.
It's a quite remarkable increase.
Yeah. So, and it's also, you can do a lot of things for the inside of a house if you want to redo a house and keep an old style, for example, and keep reproduce old profile that was in the building. We actually make a lot of custom-made molding knives for those kinds of projects. You don't have to use the standard profiles that we have. You can make custom ones that's very unique in a sense. It's usually a lot here in Sweden. We have different parts of Sweden have different types of moldings. It's probably the same globally a lot. So it's nice to be able to keep the same style from where you're actually,
where the house is and so on.
Yeah. So it's this is I think it's a fantastic machine. So I hope we sparked a lot of interest today.
Yeah. And it's in the spring campaign.
Yeah.
The deal right now, the discount is half price on the chip extractor package, together when purchasing a CH3 Planer Moulder.
And it's actually a chip extractor will be needed. We can add that as well, because if you don't use a chip extractor with this machine or similar machines, the whole machine will fill up with wood chips, and you will basically get a lot of pressure marks, and the material can get stuck in the machine as well. So you have to have a suitable extractor for the machine.